Blood soaked the hillside. Bodies littered the trenches. For 3 brutal days, 30,000 Arab warriors had hurled themselves against the Persian fortress and been slaughtered. This is the Battle of Nahavand, 642 AD, the day everything you think you know about retreat gets turned upside down. General Fīrūzān watched from his command post as dust clouds rose on the horizon. Wagons rolled away, tents collapsed. The desert army was breaking camp. Finally, the enemy was retreating. Fīrūzān smiled. His 100,000 elite troops had held. Victory was certain. But what looked like defeat was actually the most brilliant military deception in history. The Sasanian Empire was dying, and everyone knew it. For 4 centuries, Persia had been one of the world's 2 superpowers. Its armies had fought Rome and Byzantium to bloody standstills. Its merchants controlled trade routes stretching from Mesopotamia to India. But by 642 AD, the empire was hemorrhaging. Decades of catastrophic warfare with Byzantium had emptied the royal treasury. The last great king, Khosrau II, had pushed too far, conquered too much, and fallen to his own generals in a palace coup. What followed was pure chaos. His successors died one after another, assassinated, overthrown, murdered in their beds. Then came something worse than civil war. From the Arabian deserts came the Rashidun Caliphate, a force that combined military genius with religious fanaticism. Under Caliphs Abu Bakr and Umar, Arab armies exploded outward, carrying not just weapons but a revolutionary new faith. In 636, these desert warriors had achieved the impossible. At Qadisiyah, they crushed a massive Sasanian army, seized the capital Ctesiphon, and sent Emperor Yazdegerd III fleeing eastward like a common refugee. But Persia wasn't dead yet. Yazdegerd made one final desperate gamble. From his exile, he called upon every governor, every noble house. Command went to Fīrūzān of House Miran, one of the empire's most prestigious military families. This was the last stand of a civilization. The army Fīrūzān assembled was a monster. Provincial garrisons marched alongside royal guards. Conscripted farmers carried spears next to elite Savaran heavy cavalry, who had terrorized battlefields from India to Anatolia. Sources vary wildly. Al-Tabari claims 100,000 troops, but everyone agrees this was the largest Persian force assembled in decades. Fīrūzān chose his killing ground with surgical precision. Near Nahavand, in western Iran's mountains, the terrain was a natural fortress. Steep hills anchored his flanks. High ridges gave his archers perfect fields of fire. Narrow valleys would funnel attackers directly into prepared kill zones. Persian engineers turned geography into a weapon. When word of this massive Persian army reached Caliph Umar in Medina, he knew the stakes. If this force succeeded, it could roll back every Arab conquest. The entire Islamic expansion could collapse. Umar's choice for commander was telling. He chose Nu'man ibn Muqarrin, a quiet, methodical general who specialized in the impossible. Nu'man led 30,000 battle-hardened veterans drawn from Kufa, Basra, and Syria. These weren't fresh recruits. They were desert wolves who had shattered Roman legions and Persian armies across 2 continents. But even these warriors had never faced odds like this. The math was brutal. Attacking a fortified position with 3-to-1 odds against you wasn't strategy. It was suicide. But Nu'man understood something his enemies didn't. Sometimes the most desperate situation creates the most dangerous opponent. If he retreated, Persia would recover. If he waited, Fīrūzān would fortify further and gather reinforcements. There was only one option: attack an impossible position and somehow win. But how do you defeat an enemy that holds every advantage? Nu'man was about to show the world that the greatest weapon isn't superior numbers or better positions. It's superior thinking. Fīrūzān had built the perfect killing machine. The Persian position wasn't just defensible, it was a masterpiece of military engineering. High ridges gave his scouts observation posts that could track enemy movements for miles. Steep slopes would force any attacker to climb uphill. For weeks, Persian engineers had carved death into the hillside itself. Deep trenches zigzagged across the slopes, engineered death traps with sharpened stakes. Behind the trenches rose wooden palisades bristling with iron spear points. These weren't just barriers, they were psychological weapons. Manning these defenses were 100,000 of Persia's finest warriors. Infantry veterans of the Byzantine Wars formed an unbreakable wall. Behind them, positioned on rocky platforms like gods of war, stood ranks of archers and slingers. From these heights, they could rain death. Lapping fields of fire created a kill zone where nothing could survive. Every angle was calculated, every position was reinforced. But the true terror waited in reserve. The Sasanian heavy cavalry. These weren't horsemen, they were iron monsters. Both rider and warhorse encased in lamellar armor, wielding massive lances that could punch through multiple enemies at once. Fīrūzān positioned them as a mobile reserve. The steep terrain limited initial mobility, but once Arab forces became entangled, the Sasanian could strike downhill. A cavalry charge down a steep slope against exhausted, disorganized infantry was pure slaughter. The defensive system was brilliant in its layered complexity. An enemy would have to cross open ground under missile fire, breach the trenches, scale the palisades. Fīrūzān's command structure reinforced this defensive philosophy. Orders flowed down through established hierarchies to units with predetermined roles. When the Arab army arrived and encamped within sight of the Persian lines, Fīrūzān felt supremely confident. From his command position, Fīrūzān could observe the entire battlefield. The terrain between the armies told the story, a harsh, rising plain into his killing zones. For 3 days, both armies observed each other through skirmishes. The Arabs seemed hesitant, perhaps finally recognizing the impossibility of their situation. Then on the 4th day, Nu'man made his move. The first Arab assault was pure theater, and only Nu'man knew it. Persian archers unleashed volley after volley from their elevated positions. Stones from slingers cracked skulls and shattered bones. They reached the outer trenches and threw themselves against the Persian line with desperate fury. Men died screaming. Blood pooled in the ditches. Arab warriors tried to claw their way through the palisades, only to meet walls of Persian spears. The slaughter was horrific. After what seemed like hours of brutal combat, Nu'man ordered retreat. His bloodied, broken army limped back down the hill. Fīrūzān watched them go and smiled. The enemy had learned their lesson. His confidence grew. The enemy had tried and failed exactly as predicted. The next day brought the second assault. This time Arab cavalry tried to flank the position while infantry hammered the center. The result was even worse. Caught between crossfire and uphill charges, the Arabs were massacred. Bodies carpeted the slope. Persian morale was sky high. From his command post, Fīrūzān surveyed the carnage with satisfaction. His defenses were intact. His army was unbroken. Then came the night that changed everything. Persian scouts reported chaos in the Arab camp. Tents collapsing, wagons rolling south, cavalry units scattering. What the Persians couldn't see was the genius behind the chaos. Every tent that fell was positioned exactly where Nu'man wanted it. Every wagon that moved was part of a carefully choreographed deception. At dawn, Persian scouts confirmed what Fīrūzān wanted to hear. The enemy was fleeing. Some officers urged caution. Why abandon their impregnable position? But Fīrūzān saw opportunity. A broken enemy could regroup if given time. Better to finish them now in the open. He gave the order that would doom his empire. The entire Persian army poured down from the hills, 100,000 troops abandoning the fortress that had made them invincible. The trenches that had protected them lay empty. The palisades stood unmanned. Nu'man was waiting. On the flat ground below, his retreating army suddenly wheeled around and formed perfect battle lines. The Arabs no longer had to fight uphill against fortified positions. Here on open ground, they could maneuver, spread out, and fight the kind of battle they were born for. The Persians were caught completely off guard. Their tight formations had stretched during the descent. Units were scattered across the plain. At that moment of maximum Persian vulnerability, Nu'man sprang his trap. The retreating Arabs suddenly became a perfectly coordinated war machine. In seconds, the hunters had become the hunted. The Persians tried desperately to reform their ranks, but it was too late. They'd been lured away from their impregnable fortress. Their archers had no high ground. Their infantry was scattered. Their heavy cavalry was still trying to maneuver. Then came the Masterstroke. From hidden ravines and folds in the terrain, Arab cavalry erupted behind the Persian lines. Suddenly, the Persian army was fighting in 3 directions at once. Supply wagons scattered. Officers shouted contradictory orders. Fīrūzān desperately tried to restore order, but the psychological damage was catastrophic. His troops no longer knew where the enemy was or which way to face. In the confusion, Nu'man fell, struck down by arrow or blade in the thick of combat. But the Arab assault never wavered. Command passed seamlessly to Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman, and the pressure intensified. With Persian cavalry scattered and their infantry fighting on multiple fronts, the Sasanian lines finally snapped. The center collapsed first, then the wings. Panic spread like wildfire through the ranks. In the chaos, Fīrūzān himself was killed, possibly trampled by his own fleeing troops. With both commanders dead and no clear chain of command, the last army of the Persian Empire disintegrated. The slaughter was absolute. Thousands of Persian dead carpeted the plain. The survivors fled in every direction, abandoning weapons, armor, and honor. The final army of the Sasanian Empire was annihilated. Far to the east, Emperor Yazdegerd III received the news that ended his world. No armies remained. No fortresses could save him. For the Arabs, Nahavand became known as the Victory of Victories, not because of the numbers killed, but because of how it was won. A 400-year empire hadn't fallen to superior force or better weapons. It had fallen to superior thinking. Nu'man had understood a fundamental truth. In war, psychology matters more than strength. Fīrūzān had possessed the perfect defensive position, overwhelming numbers, and every tactical advantage. But he'd made one fatal mistake. He'd let his enemy control the narrative. He'd seen what Nu'man wanted him to see, and it had destroyed him. The lesson of Nahavand echoes through military history. The strongest fortress is worthless if you abandon it. The largest army is helpless if you can control where it fights. After Nahavand, the Sasanian Empire's collapse accelerated beyond anyone's imagination. Without an army to defend it, Persia simply dissolved. City after city opened its gates. Governors surrendered without a fight. The administrative apparatus that had governed millions simply transferred its loyalty. Yazdegerd fled ever eastward, from province to province, seeking allies that no longer existed. The emperor of a 400-year dynasty had become a hunted fugitive. In 651 AD, 9 years after Nahavand, Yazdegerd was assassinated, cornered in a mill near Merv. The last emperor of the Sasanian Empire died alone, betrayed and forgotten. What rose from Persia's ashes was something unprecedented. The Arab Caliphate absorbed Persian administrative genius, Greek philosophy, and Indian mathematics. Persian culture didn't die, it transformed. Persian bureaucrats ran the Caliphate. Persian scholars translated Greek texts. Persian architectural styles shaped Islamic civilization. In many ways, Persian civilization conquered its conquerors. The Islamic Golden Age was built on Persian foundations. For Iranians, Nahavand remains a wound that never fully healed. It marked the end of Zoroastrian Persia and the beginning of Islamic Iran. The battlefield itself is quiet now. The trenches have long since filled in. The palisades rotted away, but the lessons remain. Nahavand teaches us that empires don't fall because they're weak. They fall because they stop thinking, stop adapting, stop respecting their enemies. Military academies still study Nahavand as a masterclass in deception. But what exactly made Nu'man's plan so brilliant? First, he understood that perception is reality in war. The Persians expected a siege or retreat. Nu'man gave them what they expected, but weaponized it. The 3 days of failed assaults weren't defeats. They were investments. Each failure made the Persians more confident, more eager to finish the job. Timing was everything. Too early, and the Persians wouldn't believe it. Too late, and they might fortify further or receive reinforcements. Second, Nu'man understood his own strengths. Arab armies excelled in mobile warfare, rapid maneuvers, cavalry charges, fluid tactics. The Persians had built an army for defensive warfare. Heavy cavalry, layered fortifications, massed infantry. Perfect for holding ground. Terrible for pursuing a fleeing enemy. Third, Nu'man weaponized his enemy's strengths. That massive Persian army became a liability the moment it left its fortifications. 100,000 troops are easy to command from a fixed position, but during a pursuit across rough terrain, command and control disintegrates. While the Persians descended in chaotic pursuit, the Arabs executed a choreographed dance of war. Every unit knew its role, every commander understood the plan. This is the essence of strategic genius, turning your enemy's greatest strengths into fatal weaknesses. But beneath the strategic brilliance and tactical innovation, Nahavand was a human tragedy of staggering proportions. The soldiers who died on that field weren't abstract numbers. They were fathers and sons, brothers and husbands. Historical sources claim anywhere from 30,000 to 100,000 Persians died. Each number represents a family destroyed, a community shattered. The Arabs paid heavily too. Nu'man himself fell in the battle he'd designed. Thousands more died in those theatrical assaults that were all too real for the men who fought them. For Zoroastrian Persians, Nahavand meant more than political defeat. It marked the end of their civilization's religious identity. Many Zoroastrians fled to India, where their descendants, the Parsi, preserve ancient traditions to this day. Nahavand created a diaspora that still echoes. Yet Persian culture proved more resilient than Persian arms. The language survived, the poetry flourished. The administrative traditions became essential to Islamic governance. Nahavand reminds us that military genius and human tragedy are inseparable. Every brilliant strategy is written in blood. The principles Nu'man used at Nahavand remain relevant today. Modern militaries call it shaping operations, making your enemy see what you want them to see. Before D-Day, the Allies convinced Hitler that Normandy was a feint, and Calais was the real target. Same principle, 1,300 years later. These lessons extend beyond warfare. In business, politics, and competition, controlling your opponent's perception is often more valuable than direct strength. Technology changes tactics, but strategy remains constant. Whether you're using cavalry or drones, the principle is the same. Make your enemy fight on your terms. Fīrūzān's mistake echoes through history. How many commanders have abandoned strong positions to pursue seemingly beaten enemies? How many have seen what they wanted to see? Modern intelligence agencies study Nahavand as a case study in counterintelligence. How do you know when enemy intelligence is real versus planted? The most advanced technology can't replace judgment. Fīrūzān had scouts, advisors, and experience, but he lacked the wisdom to question his own assumptions. This is why militaries still study ancient battles. The weapons change, but human psychology doesn't. So what do we make of Nahavand? Was it genius or just luck? Strategy or circumstance? The evidence suggests Nu'man's victory was no accident. The 3-day defeat, the choreographed retreat, the hidden cavalry. Each piece fit a larger design. Fīrūzān wasn't incompetent. His decision to pursue made tactical sense based on what he could see, but Nu'man had ensured he could only see one thing. That's the cruel irony of history. We judge decisions based on outcomes, not on the information available at the time. What if Fīrūzān had stayed in his fortress? What if he'd sent cavalry scouts to verify the retreat? History might have flowed very differently. The Sasanian Empire might have survived. The Islamic expansion might have been checked. The cultural map of the Middle East might look completely different. But that's not what happened. Instead, Nahavand opened the door to centuries of Islamic civilization that preserved and advanced human knowledge. Was Nahavand a tragedy or a triumph? The answer is both. History rarely offers simple narratives. We began with blood on a hillside and bodies in trenches. Now we understand what that blood purchased. Nu'man ibn Muqarrin proved that intelligence defeats strength, that preparation conquers numbers, that perception shapes reality. Fīrūzān learned too late that the strongest position is worthless if you abandon it, that confidence without wisdom is just arrogance. Both armies represented military traditions honed over centuries. Neither was superior in absolute terms. But on that day, one strategy proved better than the other. Nahavand, 642 AD. The day a 400-year empire fell because its commander believed a lie designed specifically for him. The day that proves the oldest military truth. In war, the greatest victory goes not to the strongest, but to the smartest. If you learned something new, hit that like button. Subscribe for more military history that makes you think. And let me know in the comments, what other battles deserve this kind of deep dive?